What's up, guys? Dylan Rush here, joined today by the former King of the Cage middleweight champion, boasting a 21-13-1 professional record, owner and founder of Next Generation MMA in Frisco, Texas, current head coach of undefeated featherweight, Lucas Brennan. Chris, the Westside Strangler. Brennan, how you doing, Chris?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I gotta ask you, since it says it on the Zoom, Westside Strangler, who came up with that nickname? I love that nickname. How did it originate?
So, Mikey Burnett?
No.
So he was a Lions Den guy back in the day, and his nickname was the East Side Assassin. And I cornered Tito when Tito fought Guy Mezger the second time, and there was a bunch of beef afterwards, and we all kind of got locked in a room for a little while, and then security brought us from the venue to the hotel, and all of the Lions Den guys were waiting on the other side. And he was the only small guy. And I told my buddy Jeremy, I said, man, if this goes down, I said, I got Mikey. And he goes, oh man, he goes, that'd be sick. It'd be the East Side Assassin versus the West Side Strangler. And I was like, oh hell yes.
That's dope. That's dope
Good
story.
stuff.
All right, so I wanted to go a little bit in chronological order. We'll jump around a bit, but if you want to start from the start, I would love to. You were born
Sure.
you were born in Compton.
I was.
You moved to Orange County. That's where you were raised for most of your early life, right? I read
Yeah.
you lived in 19 different homes growing up. What was that on account of? Was it parents? Was it moving around? What was that about?
My parents were shady as fuck.
So you guys
Yeah,
just
I
moved.
lived in 19 houses or 18 houses in 17 years or 19 houses in 18 years. Like, yeah, it was wild.
So did you move around like in the same area, or were you moving around California?
Um, it was all most of it in California, a little bit in Utah, but it was a few houses in one area, and then we'd have to move to another area, and so on. Like I only went to school through ninth grade, and I went to nine schools in 9 years of school.
God, you must have met a lot of people, but it must have been hard to like keep friends, right? If you're moving around that much.
Yeah, it was rough for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
I also read that you worked as a bouncer. You saw UFC one, you saw Hoist Gracie on the screen. Is that what got you into MMA originally, or were you already into the sport before that?
No, there was like I had no way of seeing it or hearing about it before that. There were guys who were lucky enough to train in the garage with the Gracies and stuff like that. But I was bouncing with Todd Medina, who fought in UFC 5, and then I was also friends and bouncing at another place with Chemo, who fought Hoist, in UFC 3. And so when I saw that, I was like, oh shit, And I found a place the next day, started training, and then gradually worked my way to the Gracie Academy. Once I found out that Hoist was local, sort of local. He's about an hour and a half away from me, and I just started training right after.
So like how long in between like that night as a bouncer versus when you first met Hoist and started training with him?
Um, Probably a year, but I was training the day after. The day after UFC one, I was training.
That's crazy. And then
Yeah.
within a year you were with Hoist, and then 7 years after that you get your black belt.
Yes.
And then I read that you became the first no-gi Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu instructor in the United States.
Yeah, I was the first. Like, so I was struggling to find anyone that wanted to teach me from without the gi on, and I'm a pretty bright guy. So when you tell me that you have to wear a gi to get good at no gi, I knew you were full of shit, right? So that was everyone's selling point because that's where they made their money, and I wanted to fight, and so like all you're doing when you train in a gi, besides you get the general, basics of jiu-jitsu. But every time you grab a collar, every time you grab a sleeve, every time you grab a pant, like that's all I have that you're creating that you don't get when you fight. You don't that guy's not wearing pants or a jacket or sleeves. So you have to adapt everything right away. So I figured I would focus all my attention on one thing, and I opened my gym as a blue belt in 1998. March of '98, or actually April 1st of '98, and was the first no gi jiu-jitsu. I stayed jiu-jitsu. I stayed. I wasn't like a catch wrestler. I wasn't like a submission fighter. I still learned the techniques of jiu-jitsu and still trained. Giving credit to the Brazilians for jiu-jitsu and everything I learned up to that point. But from blue belt on, I didn't have a coach. I didn't put a gi on, again.
So where was this though? Was this in California you opened that
Yeah,
first?
Orange County.
Orange County?
I opened my first gym in Mission Viejo, and I was there probably 6 or 7 months, and it ended up closing. And then I went to my garage and grew up to like 60 students in my garage, and then I opened my next gym, and from that point on, it's been ups and downs, but it's been great since.
But this is while you're competing, right?
Oh yeah, I was just so I took the money that I made fighting in the first UFC and came home and opened my gym.
Okay. Okay. I gotta ask you this. Do you feel like that night when you were a bouncer, if you hadn't caught that TV, if it was on a different channel or whatever, do you feel like you would have inevitably one day come to jujitsu and come to fighting, or do you feel like your whole life might have been completely different if you didn't see that?
Um, so if I wasn't in trouble before I caught it, I for sure would have signed up for it as soon as I saw and witnessed it. But I got in a lot of fights. I was fighting all the time, getting in trouble all the time, and so when I saw it, I was like, man, these guys are fighting with a referee. They're getting paid. No one's getting arrested afterwards. Like, sign me up. This is get
Yep.
me out of trouble. And then I fell in love with jujitsu and became a jujitsu guy. Like, out of my 21 wins, 19 are by sub and 18 are in the first
18.
round. So I just became a jiu-jitsu fanatic, and it hindered me a bit because I was so aggressive that also the majority of my losses probably happened in the first round as well because it was like kill or be killed. That's how I was raised. So I got better. To be honest, I'm 10 times better now than I was when I was fighting. I just gradually got better because I started off on my own, and so by the time I was retired at 40 years old, I felt like I was better than I ever had been. And then so I competed in the Jiu Jitsu World Championships the next 3 years in a row and won those just because I finally felt, I was confident enough in all my skills.
2013 IBJJF Black Belt No Gi World Champion. Same thing in 2014 and 2015. 2014 Pan Am No Gi Champion. Between 2013 and 2015, in 20 grappling matches, only 4 points were scored against you. I have to ask you, Chris, do you feel like at your peak you were one of the best grapplers on the planet?
Yeah, man. I mean, I feel like I am or was. I feel like I've created two of the best grapplers on the planet now, just because I've been able to take my skills that I was getting at an older age and was able to focus it, give it to my kids, and they're able to have it at such a young age. Like, Lucas is only 1 year older than the year I was when I started training. And he's already 8-0 in Bellator and
Yeah.
a savage. And Tyler is a monster wrestler, crazy jiu-jitsu, and he'll be a fantastic fighter as well. So I feel like, yes, I was. Like, I took an invite to ADCC on 5 days' notice in my first match with Marcelo Garcia, right? So, like, I have opportunities that I wish were better opportunities with the same opportunity, if that makes sense. Like, I would love to have had a match with Marcelo with proper preparation, but I never trained for a jiu-jitsu match in my life until I retired from fighting. And then I did very well at that point. Out of those 4 points, I think you said was four. I mean, I don't even know. I know one was a takedown, and I don't know what the other ones, but I submitted everybody but one guy. And that was first time competing since 2005. I jumped into jiu-jitsu tournaments and just started submitting black belts like it was cool. So
I gotta be
yes,
I gotta be completely honest with you. When I first met you, I had no idea of what the savage you were. I didn't know about all these accolades. I didn't know about all you've accomplished in the sport. Like, and it's crazy to be talking about it now. I gotta ask.
no.
I gotta ask. You were 4-1-1 before the UFC. I'm curious, how did that go back in the day, back in the late '90s? How did it go, or in the mid '90s, getting into the UFC? Like, what was that process like? Like, how did you come into contact with people? Was it through training partners? How did that work?
So my fourth, fifth, and I believe seventh fight was Pat Miletich. And it was like his 20th, 22nd, and whatever. Like, he had so much more experience than me. And I was a blue belt in jiu-jitsu, and jiu-jitsu was my strength. right? So I literally was like the second belt, and that was my stuff. So I fought a couple times, and then training at the gym I was training at the time, I got invited to fight. I was an alternate in Extreme Fighting Battlecade, which was a show that John Peretti was putting on. He was later on the UFC matchmaker. So I was an alternate to fight Pat Miletich, um, Matt Hume, Kenny Monday, and John Lewis. And it was weird that I was an alternate because like I had to go to the event and everything. And Carlos Newton was actually the alternate for the weight class above me, and neither one of us got to fight. And then so they scheduled me and Miletich to fight in the Extreme Battlecade number 4, and then that never happened. That event folded. So Monty Cox, who's Pat Miletich's manager, hit me up and said, "Hey, do you still want to fight Pat?" And I was like, "Yes." And he owned Extreme Challenge, so he brought me in to fight Pat. We fought one round to a 20-minute draw, and then I'm talking shit because like I was barely training and I'm hanging with this guy who's one of the best. And I was like, let's fight again. So 2 months later, we fought again in a 30-minute round, one round. I lost a split decision. And then 2 months later, well, shortly after that, the UFC says they're going to have their first lightweight tournament and start at 170. And I end up being in that, fighting Miletich in the finals of that. So I fought him 3 times in a 6-month period or a 5-month period.
That's crazy. So that debut was March 13th, the lightweight tournament, 1998. You won via armbar submission the first round. Then you have to fight again later that night.
Yeah. So that I didn't think again like that. I didn't think I'd be in the tournament, right? So once I won my fight, I'm up in the stands hanging with my family, eating hot dogs and shit. And I see Mikey Burnett and Eugenio Tadao beating each other to death. And I'm like, oh man. I was like, maybe one of them will continue. And so I kind of hopped up and I'm watching the fight. And I started cruising down through the bleachers or through the stands. And I get backstage and John Peretti's running down the hall saying, Brennan, warm up. And I was like, oh man. So I was like, okay, cool, I get to fight. So I started jump roping, and I'm like, oh, bro, it's Miletich again. And sure enough, I had to fight Pat again. And so coming from where I came from, I didn't really have big goals. I wanted to get to the UFC. That was my goal. Like get to the UFC, and I wasn't thinking past that. And when John McCarthy of all people walks out and looks at me and he says, "This is for the UFC lightweight championship. Are you ready?" And I was like, "Ugh." And so I lost to Pat that night. That was the first time he finished me, and it was about I forget how long, 9 or 10 minutes or something like that. And but I was just, unfortunately mentally I completed everything I wanted to do, and I had to go home and like, okay, you were in the UFC just now. Let's get your crap together and start to really focus on your career and whatnot.
I was going to ask about Antonio McKee. You fought Antonio McKee, a guy I see at all these fight weeks, of course, with his son AJ. You won that fight via knockout, via head kick. Do you ever speak to people like him or Pat Miletich, who you had such a big rivalry with, or fighters from back that you fought back in the day? Do you have a relationship with anybody, whether it be a good relationship or a bad one?
Me and Pat are still really tight. We talk a lot, actually. He's a super good dude. Me and Antonio, so shortly after the Antonio fight, maybe not shortly, but within a couple of years, he helped me get ready for another fight. He came up to Big Bear and was training and staying in my cabin, training, helped me get ready for somebody. And then later, I find out, and this is just like a year or two ago, that he lost it when I beat him. He had not lost yet. He was undefeated. He went, and a friend got him a gun and a silencer, and he was literally he found where I lived, and another guy had to talk him out of coming to kill me. And I'm like, what? I was like, he was staying in my cabin after that. But he said all this on a podcast, and I'm like, what the hell? And I hadn't seen him in years. And then just now at Pachanga, he was there. And during the weigh-ins, I sat down and talked to him for about 10 minutes. Super cool. We got along great, and I thought we would, he lost after I did. I lost after I beat him. Like it wasn't like I wasn't the only guy, you know, in the world that I was just the first guy. And at that point in time, he probably felt unbeatable. So it was, you know, it is what it is. He's a good dude.
I want to see AJ versus Lucas now one day.
Yeah. I mean, here you go, Mr. Media. Lucas's first Bellator fight was his first professional fight. AJ's 15-0. And media guys are like, what do you think of the buildup between you and AJ? And I'm like, he's never even fought before. Like he has 3 amateur fights. Sit down. You know, AJ's a stud, you know. And maybe one day it happens, you know, AJ went to 155. You know, but it'll be down the line if
Yeah.
ever. And but yeah, people were in his fourth fight. They're like, you should actually be in the rankings. I was like, he's got 4 fights.
So you mentioned Tyler. Of course, we've talked about Lucas. Is Tyler still wrestling at University of Arkansas?
Yeah, he's got one more. Well, at Little Rock,
And you,
he's got one more season.
and you said he's gonna be a good fighter too. So is he planning to jump right into it right out of college?
It sounds like it. Yes.
Okay, cool. I wanted to ask, did you always know that your sons would follow you in your footsteps of this combat sports career?
No, man. When my kids were, I think 7 and 8 or 8 and 9, they came home from school and told their mom that they wanted to try karate. They want to start karate. And I'm like, do you know who your dad is? Like, what do you mean try karate? And she's like, you gotta let him try it. So they did karate for like, I don't know, a couple months, 2, 3 months, and then didn't do it anymore. And then Lucas was like very, very unathletic. He didn't play sports. He played soccer one year and would like run behind the coach and keep his head behind the coach's shirt. Like he was just not an athletic kid. He read a lot. He was into animals and art and books and stuff. Some of the stuff he's still into. And so going into 8th grade, I believe, I was like, hey, you need to start training. I just opened my gym in Texas. You need to start training for self-defense reasons, you know, at least 2 times a week. Okay. You know, so he comes and Tyler was super athletic. Tyler was racing motocross and he was like me. He was just like born athletic. And so they trained for a few months and then Tyler wanted to compete and Lucas didn't. So we went to a tournament and Tyler won. And Tyler and Luke were pretty even every day on the mat. So on the way home from the tournament, Lucas says, when's the next tournament? And I was like, I don't know why. He goes, I'll do it. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And his first year was 50-50. You know, he'd like win some, lose some, win some, lose some. And he just continued to be stubborn and work and work and work. And then got better and better. The following year, it was high school when he started wrestling. And then everything just gradually, you know, his work ethic was probably the most impressive thing, and his mind, the way he structures everything and puts together his fight camps and everything is just like, I would like to say it's different than probably 99.9% of people that fight. And I also believe that that's why a lot of his fights have looked as easy as they've looked.
Yeah. I have to ask this question. This is a weird one, but you are the Westside Strangler. You are kind of, it seems like kind of a little hard ass. Now you have this son, Lucas, who loves animals, who loves artwork, who loves music. Did he get any of that from you, or maybe was that more from his mother?
Um, his mom a bit, you know, for sure. I think we just raised them like she was a sort of a badass as a child as well, like a troublemaker as well. So I think we just raised them with a lot of love. We raised them a lot different. They never went through, you know, the stuff that I went through for sure growing up. They never got in the trouble that she or I got in. And so I think so I had from the time I was born until the time I was 7, I had 4 dads and like adopted last name 4 dads by the time I was 7 years old. And just had, you know, shitty parenting. And so I wanted to make sure that they did not and just kind of went about it a different way. So I was probably softer on them. I was definitely softer on them than their mom was, you know, and just softer on them in general, which hurt maybe a little bit in certain areas where you know, then once this all started and I'm trying to be a little more strict and kind of hard about things. Like I don't push them very hard. They push themselves. And I'd get dads sometimes after tournaments and be like, oh, I saw you coaching your kids this weekend, and man, how do you do that? I was screaming and yelling at my kid, and you were just talking to your kid, and I was like, well, first of all, if you've ever competed in anything and you lost, you sure don't need someone to come bitch at you for losing. He didn't lose on purpose. And my kids work so hard to be good and to win that if they lose, they're going to beat themselves up. They're already crushed. They don't need me to pile on top of them, And then I'm the soft. Are you okay? Are you okay? We'll figure that out, and then later we'll go back and figure out what went wrong and how to fix it. But it yeah. So I've definitely not raised them, the way I was raised, and it's made them nicer, obviously nicer kids, nicer grown men. And he's not a, if you watch him when he wins, like the biggest thing he's ever done is like clap his hands and put one hand in the air, barely. There's no showboating out of either one of them. Tyler won, nationals in Iowa, the wrestling national championship, and he kind of smirked and raised his hand. He won state championship, kind of smirked and raised his hand. And he beat a kid who had been undefeated through all 4 years of high school until the final match of state, and Tyler beat him and kind of smirked and raised. And that kid, as a sophomore, beat Tyler 14-4. And so, he came back and he smiled and raised his hand. Man, there's good kids, and I think we're lucky that they were good kids, but at the same time, I think we can raise them, with a lot of love and not a lot of hard discipline.
You definitely have great kids, man, and it's definitely a testament to your parenting ability. But parenting aside, let's talk about coaching. If it were up to you, would you rather be remembered for your fighting career, your grappling, all of that stuff, or for coaching a future champion, hopefully, in Lucas Brennan and your other son, Tyler?
Bruh, I would take every win I ever had for Lucas's first night winning. That's it. One win. That's all. Like every pride fight, UFC fight, like it doesn't matter. I would take all of that for the feeling that he got and that we got together as his first night winning a fight and realizing, fuck, man, he is this good. And then it continued to snowball from there. And he's beat guys, and guys are like, oh, he needs to fight someone tougher, and he will be now, But every guy has been a tougher guy who's coming off of a really good fight or something that looked great, and then Luke's made him look, average. So they're like, oh, it needs to be tougher. I'm like, okay, but again, he's got 8 fights. Before it was 7, 6, 5, 4, and he's always fought guys with more fights than him for the most part. And so I just feel like he's it's for sure what he's doing is way, way cooler and more important than what I did.
Did he have any amateur fights, Lucas?
3.
3 amateur fights, okay. But then he didn't have any pro fights like outside of Bellator. He went straight into Bellator, straight into the Gauntlet, 8-0.
5 weeks after his last amateur fight, he fought in Bellator.
Really?
Yeah.
So, like, you can't expect – and how old is he now? 22? What was he, 20 back then? He's not going to be –
19.
19. He's not going to be fighting the top 5 in the division as a 19-year-old. If he did, it wouldn't be smart for anyone. It's not, that's not.
And I hate to use Aaron Pico as an example because he's a stud. He's probably the top guy in our division, I believe, at the moment. But he jumped in too soon. Like, he was great. He had great wrestling, great boxing. I don't know what his jiu-jitsu is like, but it's solid enough. But he just jumped in fighting a 10-0 guy right off the bat, and then it kind of sent his career on a little bit of a spiral. And fortunately, he got with Greg Jackson and has like really brought it together. And now he knows how to use all those aspects of his fighting abilities as one. And we just, first of all, I think because I'm his dad, I wasn't going to let him jump in and fight, crazy opponents. And whether he could or couldn't beat him, I don't know. But there's a process of getting experience, And I don't care if there's a guy that's 0-8 when you're making your debut. That guy's walked to the cage 8 times. He's prepared 8 times for a fight. Maybe prepared if he lost 8 times. I don't know. But, he's got experience doing that. And that is something you can't duplicate until you do it. So I feel like we have having me coaching him and we'll be coaching Tyler the way that I do and look out for them and manage them. I feel like I have their best interest, right? Like Lucas is making good money. I don't take a percentage of it. A manager would be taking a percentage, a coach would be taking a percentage. He's just saving and saving and saving and fighting. And I'm doing everything for his best interest. And I don't think you ever really have someone doing everything for your best interest like you would in this situation.
Definitely. Speaking of saving and saving and saving, back in, I don't know, June last year, I think Lucas told me that if we were up to him, he would love to retire by the age of 30. Is that
That's
still
the plan.
that's the plan?
That's the plan. I mean, if it lingers over into 31, 32 or something because of where he is in the career or title or something like that, then sure, but like somewhere in that range, like he's fighting to be great. He's fighting to put away a lot of money, and so far he's doing both.
And he has a lot of passions outside the sport. We've talked about him a bunch that he probably would love to pursue after the fighting career is all said and done. So that's good. Talk to me a little bit about Next Gen MMA. It seems like everything's going well down there. I want to hear a little bit about it. You got Austin Ford who just joined you guys over from Glory. What can you tell me about the gym, how it's been going over there in recent months?
So I'll back up real quick and go back to California. I had my gym in California. I had 20 pro fighters. We were like one of the most dominant teams in Southern California, and just a bunch of hard asses. Like we were really good guys, really tough guys. And then I moved here when I opened my gym. So, for example, in California, I had probably 120, 150 students, 20 pro fighters. Here, I've got like 450 students plus, and I only had three fighters. Lucas, this kid Delmer, who was an amateur, and another kid Garrett, who hadn't even fought yet. And that's who Lucas was getting ready for his last few fights for, or his early fights with, and me.
Mm-hmm.
And then we started going to Little Rock when Tyler started wrestling there, so Lucas could train with Bryce Mitchell, and him and Bryce Mitchell trained a lot, and TJ Brown. And then we were a couple camps ago, 2 camps ago, and I'm watching him, and he's just on a different level than the guys that I've got. And I'm panicking because I know our guy was tough, and I knew we had a tough guy. I believe it was against, well, actually, it was against the fight that didn't happen. Well, in Chicago, but I'm watching them like, man, and I started to panic. And I told him, I said, as soon as we walked out of the gym, I said, hey, we need to go somewhere right now. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, like you're toying with these guys. You're trying new things. You're playing like this is an MMA class. I said, you need to be culture shocked. You need to get your butt kicked for a minute. And so on the way home, I started messaging James Krause. And because I had talked to him a little bit before, and he had told me that he had already been studying Lucas. And I was like, well, shit, if you're studying him, we're going to come train with you so we don't fight somebody from there. And so we went home, we packed our shit. In like 2 days, we went up there for a week to try it out. And I was always curious how he performed against great guys. I knew Bryce, and he does a fantastic, he does very well with Bryce, and he's one of the best guys. But that was one guy in an isolated gym. So we went up there, and the first day, his eyeballs were this big. He was getting put in positions that he had not been put in. He was getting held down. He was struggling a little bit, and came back, and I said, hey, look, it doesn't matter what happens here. It matters how you fight. And I said, and the reason you're having a hard time is because they don't give a shit who you are, because the next guy is you again. And the next guy is you again. There's 50 of you on this mat right now. He goes, 50 dudes, 22 in the UFC, and 5 of them in his weight class. I was like, so don't worry about who's who. Just go train. Next day, it just got better and better and better and better because it was all here. And once he realized that, we went back up there for a 6 week period of time, and it was his level skyrocketed because he was challenged, and his confidence, just went up and up and up. So then we came back, fight didn't happen, all the madness with James Krause happened, and I'm like, okay, so I kind of hauled around 5 gyms and got open arms from everybody. Everyone was like, yes, super excited, super cool. And then I talked to one of my students, Will Starks, who was with me before, moved back home to Kansas City and started training in Glory. Well, he was up there when we went up there. So when I came back and all that happened up there, I messaged Will and I said, hey, what are you going to do? And he goes, I'm coming back. And I said, cool, let's go. And then I had sat and talked to Austin in the gym one day for a while. And I vibed with him and I could tell he was a good coach and seen him coach up there. So I told Will, he said, I'm sitting here with Austin right now. I said, ask him what he's doing. And he said, what do you want me to do? And I said, bro, come down here. And we worked that out over the phone. And I think it was a week he was down here. And then Tim Elliott lives upstairs in my house now. And we've got on average 12 to 14 guys on the mat every day that are really good guys, like solid guys. And the 2 guys that were training with me before, Delmer and Gary, their level skyrocketed as well. So now they've caught up to everybody. And so now we have a really solid room. And I don't want more than, I tell these guys all the time, I don't want more than 20 guys. You know, I don't want a crazy, unmanageable gym, but I want to keep my regular students, because I have a ton of them, and continue to build those programs. But my MMA program, I want no bigger than 20, and I just want 20 quality guys. And so it took quite a while for it to build up. But once I got Austin down here and I got kind of remotivated to coach, you know, more than just Luke and these couple guys, everything. We fought 4 times and we got 4 wins just since Austin got down here, and just kind of are on a escalator going up now.
Oh yeah, that's great to hear. Great to hear. I know you spoke about how you provide the guidance to make sure Lucas isn't, going too fast or taking matchups he shouldn't take or whatnot, stuff like that. Are you happy with the pace that Bellator has pushed him at? Are you happy with the positions that the promotion is putting him in? Sometimes, later on the prelims, like he keeps moving up each time. Are you happy with how the promotion has been treating him?
They've been awesome. Like we couldn't, we wouldn't be happier anywhere else. They let him debut with them. They have gradually, grown him up more and more and more. He just signed a new contract last week. We'll be fighting different opponents moving forward. Um, uh, and I'm excited about it. I'm excited to see the progress in Luke and everybody now. It's like, oh, I want to see him strike. I want to see him strike. I was like, first of all, you want to see Khabib strike too, but he didn't, right? He'd hit somebody and do his thing. GSP, same thing. He'd strike a little bit and then he'd grab you. Like the best guys fight where they're the best, right? Mm-hmm. So Lucas, if you come into my gym, he fights every day on the feet. Like on days that we do MMA sparring and takedowns are legal, he doesn't even go for takedowns. I'm like, why don't you? It's really my only chance to get to bang, to really fight on the feet. And I was like, cool. And his striking's good. You've never seen him in a stance in the cage that he really was going to sit down on his punches and strike with you. Everything is to make you want to strike with him, and then it's easy takedown. And so Bellator has been phenomenal. I hope we don't ever have to go anywhere. He like I said, he makes good money. He gets his own sponsors, so he makes good money there. He's putting a lot of money away. And at 22, we couldn't ask for anything else. So I think he had 3 fights left on his contract this time, but Bellator and us knew that, okay, let's not fight through those fights and let's go ahead and hop up now, and moving forward he'll be fighting only rostered Bellator guys, and I'm excited about it.
Higher competition, a little bit more money, right?
A lot more money and higher competition.
And the dream, maybe Tyler joins him in Bellator one of these years, right?
I mean, that's the plan. If Bellator will still do that type of thing, we'll grab him a couple of amateur fights and get right to it, because his level of jiu-jitsu, people just don't know. And mixed with 5 years in a D1 wrestling room, it's gonna be exciting. And the coolest thing, man, is they are both their biggest fans. They are each other's biggest fans.
Oh yeah.
And they get along great. But like when Tyler this last fight in Pachang was the first time Tyler's ever got to come watch Lucas fight. He missed all of them because of wrestling. He'd seen his amateur fights, but no pro fights. And at each fight, when Lucas fights, Tyler's whole team gets together to watch, but Tyler goes in his bedroom and closes the door and watches it alone in his bedroom. He won't even watch it with everybody because he's so nervous for Luke and whatever. But yeah, they're the guy that you see in the background going nuts. They're their biggest cheerleader, so it's awesome.
As they should be, man. You raised them right. This is officially the longest interview I've done since December. Brandon Royval. I know you're a busy man. We got two more questions for you.
Let's go.
We'll start with, what's your proudest moment from your own career? You can't say one of Lucas's wins. You can't say Tyler's wrestling accolades. What's your proudest moment from your own combat sports career?
I'm going to give you two. Jiu-jitsu wise, this is my first world championships. I had a flying armbar in the finals and bounced on my head as he tapped. And when I stood up, I was going like this. And everyone thought I was like in tears, but I couldn't see because I bounced my head off the mat. I'm seeing stars. But when I put my hands up, Eddie Bravo, just a lot of guys were literally the first row of people standing in front of me. And so that was awesome, great to do. I guess, man, I guess MMA wise, I don't know if it's like a big win. Like Antonio McKee was obviously a huge win, winning by knockout. I knocked out multiple people leading up to that fight in camp with head kicks, and so a big win like that. But like fighting in Pride, fighting in Pride was probably one of the biggest, craziest moments of my life. And then honestly, just I had a good career. It wasn't crazy. I was fighting for my family. I was married with kids, and I was fighting for money. I was taking fights that I probably should have taken at certain times, but I feel like just the accomplishments that I was able to accomplish over the period of time, which is now giving me my gym here in Texas is doing so well. It's giving me my kids that are, following what I've been able to do. I think just everything I've kind of accumulated over the 29 and a half years that I've been training, and it was like 18 years of fighting, I think. That's kind of the thing for me is just like every time I walk towards the front door of my gym, I'm just like, that's mine. Crazy. I literally dropped out of school in ninth grade.